What's going on? My name's Liam with Wally's World. Today's going to be a podcast episode that's going to be free-flowing, but I'm going to start on the art of simplicity and how it's been made apparent recently and how it's something you always got to go back to and how we learn things as humans. So I was reading a book this morning called The Book of Secrets by Osho. Osho was a kind of, I don't even know what to call it, not Buddhism. He was kind of a Buddhist, but he followed his own practice called Tantra. The Tantra is the book or whatever. So they don't condemn anything. So nothing is bad, because their belief is that to say something is bad also holds within it to say something is negative. So if you say, oh, the weather's really good today, then you've by default labeled other days as bad. And the objective is to reduce suffering. So if you want to reduce the amount of bad that you feel day to day, you do that. One of the ways to do that is by eliminating labeling. So if you label a bunch of things good, then whatever's not that is going to be painful. So you're giving yourself pain by going around and saying, oh, I can't wait for the weekend. Oh, so then every single weekday is down here and every weekend is up here in enjoyment. And that just leads to suffering. The point I'm getting at is that throughout this, it's a 1,200 page book. And throughout, a lot of the stuff that you'll hear is super simple, almost painstakingly simple. And people, there's a quote I read in, what was the book? Oh, I read it in The Doors of Perception. He says, familiarity breeds contempt. So people don't like to hear cliches or trites, or if someone has a problem, nobody wants to hear the answer that they're going to expect. So for instance, if your girlfriend comes to you and says, I freaked out because my homework is due at 11:59 and I started crying, you might be inclined to tell her what's painstakingly obvious, which is, hey, that probably doesn't matter, just knock it out and you'll feel better after. She doesn't want to hear that. She knows that. And that's a whole different topic, the topic of how to comfort someone who is in the grand scheme, meaningless suffering. But the point is, she's appalled because she expected that answer. She doesn't want to be told what she already knows intellectually. Much the same, humans don't want advice or don't want to learn the stuff that they might expect they want to learn. So humans are by default wired to want to learn stuff that's too complex or overly complex. And that happens a lot I feel like in college. Not so much, I go to community college, so I don't feel like I get a lot of that. I actually feel like my teachers kind of dumb it down because they think that the general population at a community college is of lower intellect. That's just my assumption, but because of that, I feel like the teachers have taught very simply, and although I haven't been exposed to a higher level of education, a really big known university yet, I'll get back to you on that. I do appreciate teaching things simply and not making things more complex than they need to be, which we're all prone to doing for the same reason I brought it up before. And one of the reasons we like to teach things and sound smart, which everyone's guilty of, is because we think it makes us look smarter. And it also might make your stuff more interesting. So what I found through social media is if I went on here and said, the grass is greener on the other side, as if it was some mind-breaking insight that I came up with originally, then nobody would watch that. So garnering attention on social media happens through saying something known in an unknown way. And sometimes that might mean making something more complex. But that's just to garner attention. That's if your objective is to get a bunch of views. If you're actually trying to teach something and translate value, something you know, to someone who doesn't know the thing, the way you would do that is by dumbing it down and making it as simple as possible. That makes you a good teacher, and that actually makes the other person able to learn it. That's why when you enter something in ChatGPT, you ask the thing to simplify it 2 or 3 times until it makes sense to your little nub brain. Just kidding, I didn't mean that as an insult, but you get the point. We like to skip all the bullshit. And what happens when you complexify your language, as I just did it. I could have said, what happens when you overcomplicate your words? No, I used the word complexify. It was fun. So that's why I do it sometimes. I like seeing words and language as a game, and sometimes that leads me to overcomplicate my words. Anyhow, where was I going with that? When you're teaching something, don't overcomplicate it. I don't know where I was going with that, but I think I was going somewhere good. Anyhow, I think I was talking about humans do not like familiarity. Garnering attention requires complexity. Teaching requires simplicity. Use this as a review as I mentally review to try and get my train of thought back. Man, if I could just pause this and look back, that'd be sick, but this is supposed to be a open-ended podcast style, so I'm not going to do that. But the way that I try to really hammer in these ideas, oh yes, so I was talking about words as a game. Shoot, the more I think about it, the further and further it seems from being able to talk about it again. What was I talking about, bro? Oh, I think I was going somewhere with what happens when you actually... Oh, this is where I was. Let's go. When you overcomplicate your words, what's happening is you're making the person consuming the information do more calculations to understand the information. So I've been reading Albert Camus, and his books were written in the 40s, 50s, I think maybe early 60s. And he writes, I find it interesting only because he says things that might be obvious, but in such a unique way. And that's really all you can do. People have been around for so long that I think we actually have a pretty good grasp of the way the world works. All we're doing when we create new insights is packaging it differently. And when I was reading Camus, it caused me to go back, and for some pages I'd have to read the thing 5, 10, 15 times if I wanted to actually extract meaning from it. So it depends what you're going after when you're creating something. Like I said, Camus was in a different time, so there's context there, but if he really, there's also a book written by something Fletcher, and he was the guy who created the readability grading system, and he has a book called The Art of Plain Talk, and he systemizes how to make your writing readable. And he was around the same era as Camus, so it's evident that people were able to speak simply back then. They just didn't. And I think they're respectable in their own right. So sometimes I might dress up my language to hook somebody, to differentiate myself, because there are so many people saying the same thing. So in a way, your complexity almost compensates for your lack of viewership. So since I'm a small creator right now, I've got 1.9 thousand subscribers. I don't have a whole lot of obvious evidence behind me to back up what I say. And I think that so many creators have stuff that people respect, but it hasn't gained the followers, so people don't take any meaning out of it. So for me, I see content as this thing where I sacrifice some authenticity to get that initial spark, get that ball rolling. And then you need to do that for a certain amount of time. And then once you have 1 million followers, cool. Then I feel like you can dip into what you really want to say. And since you have all this, in today's terms, proof, which is just followers, people respect what you say. So stupid, because there are idiots with a bunch of followers, and people on TikTok will apply meaning and attach meaning to what they're saying just because of their amount of followers they have, when we're all humans out here. Objectively, the work they've done might not reflect how many followers they have. But I do think you just need to take a look at what the point of the particular video you're making is. So if I'm making a video like a podcast, my idea of a podcast is as authentic as possible. I don't need a podcast to be structured. I don't think that's what a podcast is for. A podcast is meant to be a long form, uncut, free-flowing portrayal of the person recording it. And I think it's good to mix in a bit of both. But when you get into trying to be an effective teacher, that requires prep. So when I'm making a video that I'm trying to teach a very specific concept, prep work is required to make that as valuable to the viewer as possible. So I want to make a video soon on basically how and why to start social media in 2025. I'm going to dress up the title a little better, but it'll be a cool video. I already wrote the video. I just need to get off my ass and create it. So anyhow, videos like that do see it's this balance where every creator has some amount of raw, unfiltered content that not for the masses, it's for the smaller select group of viewers who want to watch that, and that only builds loyalty within those people. And at a certain point, let's take Joe Rogan's podcast, for example. He now can be so incredibly authentic and still have those numbers, those views, because he already has it. Does that make sense? With a small creator, I feel like they not unethical to get nifty with some of the minor details. So the thumbnail, the title, the structure of the video, because you almost need to prove yourself a little bit. I feel like that's the case. And then you almost transcend that at a certain follower count or community size. But in the beginning, you've got to show people why they should watch your stuff. You gotta write your videos beforehand. It's funny, numbers don't lie, broadly speaking. You can tell by looking at your most viewed videos what people derive the most value from and what they actually want to watch. So I've seen, and again, it's the balance. You don't need to make the most insane video every time, especially if you're in it for the long game, which I am. So that's why I'm making a video with probably no editing, and I'm just going to upload it because there's some people who will enjoy it. But I also need to remind myself, okay, still a small creator. I gotta get out there and push myself to make super creative, super developed content and show people what's good. Because whatever tools you use to get that spotlight, once the spotlight's on you, cool, it's on you. But you need to demand the spotlight. And I think the way you do that is through tools like thumbnail, title, editing, quality, camera quality, those sorts of things. They're not irrelevant. And I'm not saying that you can't get to the size of a Sam Sulek in terms of followers by just being completely raw, unedited. Plenty of people do that. But again, the devil's in the details here. I feel like we all want to help as many people as possible through our content, at least if your head's on straight and you're doing it for a good reason, which, by the way, I think is the method. If you're doing that, throw in some of these works, make your videos more of a work of art. Number one, you feel more proud. And number two, the amount of views is undeniable. So let me just say this statistically. Some of these videos I upload in my car, cool, I like doing it, and that matters. But I have made 2 videos that I've put, I don't know, the first one only because I didn't know how to edit, took me probably 70 hours. But I put another one in the same style of content, took me probably 20 hours. These videos take me however long it takes to film it, which in this case will be about 20 minutes. Both videos that I put 20 plus hours into got at least 500 views, but what's more interesting was the amount of likes, the amount of engagement and comments. So they got 500 on average views, both of those videos, but they had at least 50 likes. That to me says, hey, this is what people want to see, do more of this. And randomly some of these driving videos can pop, but I think you got to give the people what they want. And if that is the way that you help more people, sure, do it. Edit your videos, throw on a thumbnail that might grab attention. Same thing with the thumbnail. And all I'm doing with this podcast is just yelling at myself and processing some of these things so that it's top of mind and I put them into action. And so if you're a content creator, I hope this is insightful for you. And maybe this can be applied to other areas where you need to garner people's attention, marketing, etc. I don't think that because you have a catchy thumbnail and title, your video has got to be clickbaity and markety, whatever. I don't think you're a bad guy if you utilize thumbnails and titles, only because that's what I'm doing, so that's why I'm saying this. I'm saying this via my personal experience and what's worked and what hasn't. So yes, I don't have as large of a sample size as Sam Sulek to say this works, this doesn't. I have a shrunken sample size that I can still take information from and portray it to you guys. That's what I'm trying to do. And also, again, I'm yelling at myself. I'm saying, hey, Liam, you need to edit some good-ass videos. And that's fun for me. It's just the humans hate. It's funny. I just talked about familiarity breeding contempt. But again, we also hate unknown. It's kind of a paradox, which within paradoxes, there's always great insight. The paradox here is that I hate familiarity. I don't like making the same videos all the time. But then when the uncertainty comes of, hey, let's make a video that pushes you, the creator, and will help more people, which sounds like it's what I want. Before I start doing that, my brain says, no, put the brakes on, bro. Chill, that's uncertainty. We don't want to go in there. What a dichotomy. And I'm on the way to school right now, and I'm about to pull up. So I'm gonna put on some chill music. It's a big day. I freaking love days where I don't have anything scheduled, but I can just work. Oh man, I have really grown to enjoy that, the slow work. I'm kind of infatuated with the way writers and artists and musicians create, and I want to put that into a business context. So I liked business, but I was so heavy on the grind set stuff. Just grind. Don't enjoy anything. Everything sucks until you succeed. That seems quite unnecessary to me now. I think you can enjoy the shit, and I almost feel like the slow way of creation that the best artists, the best musicians, the best even YouTubers probably utilize. It's carefree and it's completely authentic. I think it's beautiful. So I try to garner that. There's that word again, overusing it. I try to utilize that in terms of making money and making videos. And that makes me feel like a old-fashioned poet. And I'd rather feel like a poet and a writer or an artist than a CEO, in my opinion. It sounds much more peaceful. So heading off to accounting 1. I'll see you guys later. My name's Liam. Got to do that for branding right there, but I didn't have to.